I'm software engineer at Zalando.
Yes, and I'm Mathieu. I'm engineering lead also at Zalando.
Yeah, and today we are going to talk about how to streamline product takeovers and handovers and how it works at Zalando scale. So, but first I would like to say why we're going to tell about that. During recent few months, our team had quite extensive experience of taking over quite key projects in Zalando, which had a great impact on our commercial main commercial events like Cyber Week and Black Friday. So, and we would like to share our experience with you how we do it in tech teams. So, but before, let's talk about Zalando. Just a few words. Some of you, I guess, know Zalando as an online fashion store where you can go and buy clothes. But in fact, we are also a tech company. So there is a lot of development and machinery going on behind the scene. And just give you a few numbers about our scale. So we are quite big. We have a few billions of revenue. We have lots of employees and customers. So we operate with high-load systems. Yeah, what's related to Zalando Helsinki? We have quite some innovative projects that we are working on here in Helsinki. Just to name a few of them, like Zalando Wardrobe, where you can resell your used clothes, or connected retail, when we integrate our offline shops into our online store. Some projects around Zalando logistics, and part of our main project, which is fashion store, also being developed here in Helsinki, and in particular personalized content selection features. Me and Matthew, we are in the campaigns and collections team, and the easiest way to understand what we are doing, if you open homepage of Zalando of any country, you will see a different kind of content, which approximately look like on the screen. So here is kind of the front end that you see, and here is our backend that we operate with, so different kind of microservices, databases, message queues, and stuff. But the main thing is that the goal of our team is to provide the tooling for the content creators to deliver that content to the fashion store, and we also taking care of the rendering part of it. So it's pretty end-to-end responsibilities, I would say. So just a few words about our tech kitchen, how we call it. So we have autonomous teams in Zalando. It means that as a developers, we write, we test, and we run our code. So we take end-to-end ownership of what we are doing here. So we're cloud native. We are in AWS. Most of our services are run in Kubernetes. We use continuous delivery platform for an immutable deployments to ship our code to production without any manual interventions. So in Zalando, we have a culture of open code. It means that everyone can see the code of everyone. If you need, you can search something and go and check what other teams are doing. And so, yeah. We also use API first principle. It means that before going into implementation, that we define an open API interface between our microservices, and only after we agreed that, then we go for implementation. And if you join Zalando as an engineer, or not only as an engineer, you may notice that we write a lot of technical documentation, press releases, design documents, and so on and so forth. So we have quite rich writing culture here. Yeah, and just a few numbers about our engineering scale. So we have quite a lot of engineering teams, AWS accounts, and Kubernetes clusters. So there is there are different challenges with that scale.
Good. And so as you saw, we have 200 engineering teams, and so that means that in Zalando, there happens a lot of time where you need to take over a project from another team because, for example, of organization. And so it happened a few times in our team, and we tried to come up with some principles we think that would help in that kind of project. So we came up with 5 principles. The first one is to start early. Yes, because this is can be a big process, depending, of course, of the complexity of the components that you're handing over, but it's important to start early. Then communication is the key, so really trying to over-communicate, don't be afraid of repeating yourself, ensure that everything is clear. And then we try always to have a single source of truth, and for that we try to use only one document where everything is really centralized. Of course, as for any project, you will want to iterate and not try to solve everything at once, but really go step by step. And of course, when you iterate, then it's important to not break things and to implement the changes that you're doing in a backward compatible way. So let's try to go deeper into these 5 principles. First, start early. I think the first task that is important when you have such a project is to estimate the effort that will be needed. And of course, try to estimate how many people will be involved and ensure that you have the capacity for that in your current setup. Then, of course, you need to identify also constraints and risks. Constraints can be, for example, time constraints. The handover needs to be done before a certain date, or risk can be that the new team doesn't know the tech stack of the project, and so you need to plan and to ensure that you can mitigate those risks. And of course, at Zalando, Maxime said that we are working open code, so we can see the code of all other teams, and we are also doing a lot of inner sourcing, and we try to inner source some small things, small features or fixes before the actual handover. And we think that this is a very good way to get familiar with the project before starting the actual handover. Then the next principle is about communication. Here, communication can be first with the involved teams. Usually you will have 2 different teams, the one handing over and the one taking over. So of course, in-person communication is always better, but not always possible, as we can see today at this conference. But yeah, we always manage to find ways. But it's not enough to communicate between the 2 teams. Stakeholders also needs to be really kept informed, and we need to really ensure that there is a transparency and that they understand what's happening and why this handover is happening, and who is at any point in time, who is the contact for them in case of issues or requests or anything. And then with communication goes also documentation. And documenting exhaustively as possible is important, especially while the previous team is here and while their memory is still fresh, because this can be very useful in the future.
Our third principle is that we use single source of truth when we try to communicate everything related to the task related to handover. Because imagine you have 200 teams, and in case of big projects, there are a lot of people which can be involved that. So, and if you start spreading knowledge around, then it becomes total mess when you need to search something, or like when you need to find the right people. So like our approach is very simple and we find it really efficient. So we just create Google document with some prepared structure. We document exhaustively, as Matthew mentioned. We involve everyone who is relevant for the project, and like we track all of the progress, and we make all of the discussions happen in that one document. So we prepared for you some live collaboration demo to basically show how it works in a nearly real case scenario. But before we start, let me introduce the characters. It's Matthew, who is working in Takeover team, and it's me, who is in Handover team. So, and let's imagine that we have our first video Hangouts call regarding the project Handover.
Hi, Maxim. How are you?
Hi, Matthew. All good. How's weather in Helsinki?
Well, it's always very sunny and very, very, very good.
Oh.
So yeah, I scheduled this meeting to align on this project handover. I shared before the meeting a document with you. I don't know if you had time to go through it, but yeah, I was thinking that we could go through it and see what are the different topics that we need to discuss.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I got the link, so I walked through it. So we can take a look again.
Okay, so I was thinking that first we could have a look at the infrastructure and the development environment, and then look at the operations. So important to know how to operate this system. And then, of course, more on maybe the product side, we would be interested to know if you have any ongoing features, and of course, if you could share any end user documentation or even technical documentation that you could have for your service. What do you think? Where should we start?
Well, I would suggest maybe let's go step by step. Should we start with infrastructure?
Yeah, sounds good. So I think that you are using Kubernetes to deploy your service?
Yes, that's right. We run our services in Kubernetes, and I guess you guys need access to our cluster that you will be able to maybe play around with test environment, get access to logs or to command line interface.
Yeah, so let me add a command for you to not forget about that.
Okay, that's great.
Then about the development, I think that you have a few repositories for this project, right?
Yeah, so currently we have 3 main repositories. So it's a management service, it's an admin UI, and it's a deployment configurations. So I will attach links to the GitHub repositories in this document.
Okay, cool. Let's also add a note for that.
Cool.
Then, yeah, the next very important thing is about operations, and I'd like to know if you had any dashboards to know, yeah, what is the actual system load and all that kind of stuff. Do you have that?
Yeah, actually, we have quite plenty of dashboards. Maybe I'm not the best person to give you the links, but let's include Uri into the conversation so he will know for sure.
Okay, sounds good. Well, maybe last thing for this first meeting, do you have any ongoing features that we should be aware of?
Yeah, our team currently is working on this new video uploading feature. So we managed to complete the backend part and S3 uploading of it, but UI part is still in progress, and I'm not quite sure that we managed to finish this feature before the handover. So my suggestion would be for your team to start taking a look to the UI part, maybe team up with our front-end engineers, and yeah, start learning more about it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Cool.
Thank you,
All
Matthew.
right, thank you. Yeah, so we just finished our collaboration demo. It was just a teaser. Like in reality, of course, it's a series of calls, and the scope of it is much larger, but it's something like that. So you got the feeling of what kind of discussions and what kind of topics we cover in it.
Okay, so now maybe we can jump to the fourth principle, which is iterate. So here, I guess the key message is that, yeah, don't try to solve everything at once and really progress step by step. And we kind of identify a few steps that we think can be useful. I think one first step would be that you need to reach a point where you know how to operate the system. That means that you know everything about the monitoring, the logs, alerting, and then you also should be able to evaluate the impact of any incident that can happen in the system. Then another step is about dependencies. And here we're talking first about technical dependencies. Knowing the upstream and downstream services is very, very important, but also more stakeholders dependencies and having the relevant contact and ensuring that yeah, everyone is in the loop is a very, very important thing. I guess that once you are there, you can start to really work on small features or bug fixes. And here the goal of this step would be to ensure that the new team has the correct development environment and is able to deploy so that the deployment process is clear and working for the new team. And only when you are reaching this point, you can start to think on how you will evolve the project and think about more mid-term, long-term features, and even maybe long-term product vision around this new project.
Cool. Yeah, so our fifth principle called don't break things, it's really about the reliability and backup strategies and how to make this handover smooth. So we have few key things here that I would like to highlight. First of all, we use blue-green deployment model for our APIs, database, message queue migrations, and so on and so forth. So usually when we migrate the services, those services get new URLs. It can be just a backend endpoint, or it can be some admin UI URL. So we try to don't break things and keep our users, keep systems work for our users, that they, when they come back on Monday, that the systems keep working. So we try to do graceful URL migrations, and we use DNS CNAME records like for the old URLs to make sure that it's pointing to the new version of the service. And of course, our end goal is to make sure that we migrated everything and we can shut down the old systems. So we keep monitoring the logs and identifying the users who still go to the old URLs, and we kindly ask them to switch to the new URLs. So, but let's go a little bit deeper into technical details. So some of you may have heard of the blue-green deployment model, but just few words. Let's imagine the blue is your current production state. So, and now you have a new version of your production service. What you do, you just deploy it side by side, and on the picture is a green version, and you have a little component called router in front of everything, where you can switch, basically switch the production traffic back and forth. So before switching, of course, you need to make sure that the new version works as you expect. And then after you are confident, you just switch the traffic. And you still keep blue version works for a while in case of some surprises, you know, or like accidental problems, that you always able to switch it back within the seconds or minutes. So let's take a look at how we do API migrations, just a high-level overview. So on the picture, you can see two Kubernetes clusters. So as I said, we deploy our services in Kubernetes. So on the left side, there is current version, and the green one is a new version. So we deploy our stuff using continuous delivery platform, and at this stage, our users still go to the old cluster. So the first step that we do is we deploy our new version of the services in the new cluster. I mean, the version could be the same, but just in the new cluster. So the second step would be to create CNAME, like DNS CNAME for the old URL, and then notify our users that, hey, here's a new URL, please access your tooling using this URL. Or if in terms of the services, we ask developers of related teams to change their API endpoints to the new cluster. At the same time, we keep backward compatibility, so both old and new URLs working as expected for some time. So on the last step, once we make sure that no users go to the old path, we shut down the services in the old cluster. So a few words about database migrations, because it's a very important and sensitive part, so how to migrate the data between the clusters. And there are basically two cases when downtime for writes is allowed, or only minimal downtime for writes is allowed. It means that we keep our systems working for reads all the time, but there is some downtime possible for updates. And there are different approaches for those two methods. Let's take the first one. So here on the picture, you can see two Kubernetes clusters, and as a database, we use Postgres. So We have our API endpoint connected to the current old cluster, and we have our backups. Our backups are stored in an S3. So the first step that we do is we basically first we put our current database into read-only mode, that no updates are coming from the API. So we make sure that we freeze the state, and then we deploy our database in the new cluster and pointing into the S3 backups from the old cluster, so that we have two identical clusters. So we have a clone of our old cluster in the new one. So, and the next step, we're just switching API endpoint, so to pointing to the new cluster. That way, if we accept downtime, this is perfectly fine to do it in like that. So what to do when only minimal downtime is allowed? So it means that system is more critical and more write intense. So we have the same picture. We have two Kubernetes clusters. We have database deployed in the old one. We have API endpoint pointing to the old database. So first, what we do is we create our standby cluster in the green Kubernetes cluster, which means that this node becomes a replica of the current cluster, and we still keep our old database running. So all of the writes and everything will go through. One standby cluster is restored from the backup, and we get basically identical node, but which cannot accept writes yet. So what we do next is we promote that node to be a master node, and here where this downtime happens, because master reelection may take some minutes. So after master is chosen, we need to switch our API endpoints to point to our new cluster. And after that, we can shut down our old database.
Okay, then let's try to wrap up this this presentation. So maybe first we can quickly, as a reminder, have these 5 principles that we talked about. So first one, start early, over-communicate, use one document as a single source of truth, iterate, and of course, don't break things. So following these principles, we think that you should be able to more easily do your handover, but then what's next? Once the new team has really taken the ownership of the new components, then what's important in that new team is to really assess the integration of these new components with the existing ones. And here, the questions to ask is that, okay, does this make sense? Do we have any overlaps between the previous and the new components? And then based on this assessment, I think it's important to try to define the target architecture, because things will not be perfect. And so, yeah, here, try to think about the more long-term vision and strategy to try to define what would a target architecture look like. And once you have this target, then try to find what are the concrete first steps that you can take to move toward that target. And of course, it's an iterative process, so always reassess after each step to ensure that you're still in line with what you decided before. I guess that's it for our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions that you would have.